by columnist for The National, Shona Craven, and former Conservative advisor, Claire Purcell. So welcome back to both of you. And we touched on this in the last hour, but it is a story that's dominating the front pages. And this is the news that emerged last night that an asylum seeker who was jailed for sexual assault has been mistakenly released, Shona. Here's the Sun's front page. And this is somebody that people will be familiar with the story because he was the subject of protests outside the Bell Hotel in Epping.
Yes, so it was the offences of this particular asylum seeker who had arrived via small boat and committed sex offences. It was this case that actually triggered the protests at that hotel in Epping, which obviously then spread and have generated a lot of heat in the debate about immigration. So it's extraordinary that this individual should be the one who has been accidentally released rather than sent to a deportation centre. And it's extraordinary that there is this crystal clear video footage of him still in his prison issue clothes. I dare say he's probably still not wearing those now if he is in London, and the police are hunting for him. So it is an incredible story, and I think, if anything, there's so many elements to it that the fact that it is someone whose offending triggered these scenes just makes it quite beyond belief.
Well, yeah, and the Sun is kind of having a dig at the government on its front page with the subhead at the top there, after one in, one out fiasco, yes. Their policy, their deal with France for one in, one out, where one person came back again, they're saying one out by mistake. So they're kind of pointing the finger there at the government, aren't they? And this is embarrassing for Keir Starmer, who has called it totally unacceptable himself, but all the other political parties lining up to have a go.
Of course, everybody's going to want to put their two penneth in, but I do think that this has been a particularly bad week for the government when it comes to migration. You've had, as you've said, the Iranian gentleman who was removed back to France under the one in, one out scheme has crossed the Channel and has come back to the United Kingdom. You've also seen boat crossings now reach the higher level than they had last year, so more people have been coming over by small boats. So
they've already reached the total of last year.
Already reached the total of last year, and it is only October. So it's not been a great week for Keir Starmer or Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary. And then to have this on top of it, coming up at a weekend where there are protests around the country going to take place outside migrant hotels, talking about the danger to women and children. You just think this is going to end up in a very nasty situation. You can see that the anger levels in the country are going to be building. And why hasn't this chap been seen? If he was noted getting onto a train in Chelmsford, he's heading into London, which is one of the most heavily surveilled cities in the country. And there is not one sighting of him yet, as we know, on CCTV. He hasn't been pinged by a camera in the capital. So you do wonder, has he got here or has he made it through?
Well, yeah, I guess we don't know those details. Certainly police haven't updated us on that. They have put out the news, haven't they, Shona, that they believe that he got on this particular train at Chelmsford that came into London's Liverpool Street station. And there will be a lot of officers, you imagine, tasked with finding him.
Yeah, and it's pretty incredible. I mean, I don't know if we can presume that the person who filmed him followed and saw that he got on that train, but it's quite hard to imagine how he could manage to just sort of slip into a crowd when he was so conspicuous with a clear bag with all his belongings in it. How do you know, it's like something from a sort of spy thriller if he's managed to change his appearance and be less conspicuous by the time he arrived in London. But, I mean, presumably he will be found and we'll find out the answers.
Yeah, we'll find out the answers to perhaps where he went, but there's still a lot of questions about how it happened in the first place, how this mistake came to happen, and I'm sure there's going to be some very difficult conversations in government and in the prison service. Let's move on, though, Claire, shall we? Because on the Express's front page, Kemi Badenoch is making a pitch, her plan to save the high streets, as it says there.
That's right. I mean, I think every government comes in and it wants to boost the high street. It wants to get that part of the economy working again, because as we've seen over the years, footfall on the high streets have gone down. Shops are closing at an enormous rate. The hospitality industry is taking a massive hit with pubs and restaurants closing down. So we do have to do something. But I also think that we need to look at how we, the public, behave. And I know I'm really guilty of this. I buy an awful lot of stuff online because I can choose it at the comfort of my own home. It gets delivered to me normally free of charge. I don't have to make too much effort for it. So I think that we need to understand our own behaviour and perhaps use our high streets a little bit more. And I think that younger generations, if you think back to when you were young and one of your first jobs, probably in a shop or a cafe or a restaurant, we need those kind of opportunities to be opened up again, because if we lose the hospitality industry, there's nowhere for loneliness, for example, for people to go and have a chat with other people. That might be the only person they see, but also for young people getting their first job and the first taste of the workplace is generally in those kind of industries.
Yeah, and there has been a huge discussion, hasn't there, about the demise of the high street, of various shops and chains of shops closing down, Shona. But, I mean, there are lots of different issues. It's not just about changing shopping habits. It's also about people feeling that the cost of living is squeezing the pound in their pocket.
Yeah, and it's about ensuring that businesses can offer those competitive prices because they're not being overtaxed. And so the proposal here is to just abolish business rates for 250,000 retailers. The piece also talks about pubs as well and hospitality. The Beer and Pub Association is warning more than 2,000 venues are at risk of closure next year. Again, somewhere that people might be looking for a first job, young people in particular. Also talking about the rise in shoplifting and that obviously having a very negative impact on businesses. And all of this forms part of a campaign, or should I say a crusade, Save Our High Streets by the
That's
Express.
what they're calling it, isn't it? Yeah.
I mean, you know, when Kemi Badenoch talks about Labour's job tax hitting high streets hard, obviously there's the National Insurance as part of what she's referring to there. But clearly, you know, when the Conservatives were quite recently in power, they didn't slash these business rates. So it's perhaps a little bit unfair to suggest that the current state of affairs is entirely Labour's fault.
Yeah, and it feels like the build-up to the budget, doesn't it? People making a pitch and issuing warnings and pleas for what they want to happen in the budget.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can see that we're going to have weeks of that. But I do think it is really important for the Conservatives to lay out some kind of alternative vision, because as of yet we hadn't seen that from Kemi Badenoch. So it's quite nice to see some kind of sensible pledges coming through.
Yeah, a little bit of policy.
Yes, we had none.
Yeah, initially slow to come forward with that. Shona, take us to the front of the Times. Again, a budget-related piece here, and this is about the minimum wage.
Yeah, and very relevant to what we were just discussing. So this is about Rachel Reeves reportedly being prepared to give more than 1 million low-paid workers a pay rise in the budget. Sounds like good news. And then, of course, the downside, despite warnings from businesses that she risks pricing jobs out of existence. So you have this real tension, especially when it comes to younger workers who have had lower minimum wages before. Of course, they still have to pay the same amount for, you know, goods in the shops that everyone else has to pay. And there is this question of, do they need to be given higher minimum wages, or will this mean that the jobs that they otherwise might have been able to get will disappear? So there's always, you know, trade-offs and tensions in any budget, but it sounds like a good news story when you announce it in the budget and you say this is good, you know, people are struggling, we're going to give them more pay. But of course you're going to have these business organisations getting in now, a full month before this delayed and late budget, to say this is going to have knock-on bad consequences for the very people that Labour's suggesting it's going to help.
Yeah, it's a really difficult balancing act, isn't it? Because as we were talking about, inflation still being pretty high, you know, so it's tough for people on lower incomes, and so of course they'll welcome this.
Of course they will, but you can understand from the business point of view that if they're being hit by increased costs to employ somebody, they're just not going to do it. They're not going to take those people on, and therefore the economy is going to stagnate even further. So yes, we all need a little bit of a boost when it comes to the cost of living, but not at the cost of businesses who are then going to shut down, and then unemployment will get inevitably higher.
Yeah, and we yet to see how much or if the minimum wage will rise, of course. Let's move to the Times, this is, and an article that you've spotted here, Claire. This is about NHS patients. Is that, are they being treated in the community or being kind of...
Well, this is where it's slightly unclear. So this is hospitals in England will be paid to divert patients back into the community. It doesn't say whether this is from A&E. It doesn't say whether this is what we lovingly refer to as a bed blocker in a hospital. But it's sort of on the surface, it sounds a very good idea, getting people back into the community. But where you're going to put them, I think, is going to be the real sense of the problem. Community hospitals of old no longer exist. So are you looking at putting them back into care homes?
Or their own homes?
Their
and
own
having people
home?
visiting?
Absolutely. Do you have people to visit them, to take care of them in those respects? So I think that it's one of these things that it sounds a very good idea, but drilling down the details of how that's going to happen and what patients are going to be eligible for this kind of move back into the community, I think we need to look a bit further. But if it does anything to get people out of hospitals and get them on the road to health, then that has to be welcomed.
Yeah, absolutely. But as you say, it's quite a short article and not a huge amount of detail.
Exactly.
But it raises an interesting issue. We're out of time once again. It goes so quickly, but you'll be back next hour. Thanks both very much indeed for now.
I'm Dominic Waghorn, Sky's International Affairs Editor, covering a world that seems to be unravelling.